Welcome back. This is one in a series on different techniques of peer counseling. If you've been following the series on peer counseling in general, you know that there's a dozen or so already. Lots and lots of information about concepts. In fact, I've kind of pictured a three-dimensional view of peer counseling. We looked at things behind us, not here on this board, but in our family of origin, things that generate values in us that we need to be aware of when we sit with somebody else, things that we really want in our lives, things that we want to avoid. So we realize this is our problem going into it, and we don't project it onto them. We've looked at how group values are formed behind us growing up, whether we're a millennial or a baby boomer or a Gen X guy, a Generation Y guy, or whoever. We've looked at left and right limits in terms of some people are very extroverted, some people are very introverted, some are very intuitive, some are all about the five senses, some are very logical, some are more concerned about relationships, some want to gather information, some want to make decisions, and there's a spectrum left to right, and everybody fits somewhere in the middle in those different areas. We've looked underneath us at different things that people are looking for: acceptance, control, caring, recognition, integrity, several things there. And we looked forward also, realizing that sometimes it's an emergency situation, very short-term peer counseling. Sometimes they need to see a subject matter expert. Sometimes they need to see a trusted agent, which may take more time. Sometimes they need to be in a relationship with you as a friend because of issues of purpose and meaning, which could be a lifelong journey. So we've painted a three-dimensional picture about what peer counseling is, and it can seem very overwhelming. I don't give you all this information so you'll master it or have to memorize it or become an artisan or a scientist, but I do believe that the more you know, the more you're able to understand some of the things that go on. And now I want to give you some tools in the middle of that three-dimensional picture, things that you can use. Again, don't try to master all this and treat the other person as a project. I'm not giving you tools so that you might think, if I can reach into my toolbox and get this metric wrench and give them 3 turns to the left with a certain amount of torque, everything's going to work out. A person is never a project, or never should be, but it is helpful to have specific tools that we can use to be helpful to that other person. 3 of the most basic and helpful tools that I've found are observation, reflection, and connection. I want to define all 3 of those very briefly for you, and I'll show you how they work together. Observation is simply watching the other person, observing them, their body language, their facial expression, to include vocal intonation of their how they're saying things, all those physical things that you can hear and see, and then noting that to the other person. Notice that you're really kind of tensing up your hands right now. Your eyes look like you might want to cry. Since you came in here, you've been jumping your leg a good bit. I've not noticed that before. All of those are observations that you can make, and just make one and then stop talking and just wait. Because the goal is, again, one of the goals is their greater self-awareness. And when you make an observation like that, it's to help them become more self-aware of what they're doing, and that they might begin to make connections of why that is. If they can't yet, you might move on to the next one, which is a reflection. A reflection is a paraphrase, or sometimes a parrot saying exactly back to them what they just said. But you want to be selective in your reflection, to say something back to them very brief that seemed to be emotion-laden. In other words, they got upset when they said it, or right after they said it, they started to get upset, and you could see that manifest in their body. Whether they seem to get more nervous, more sad, more angry, or whatever. Well, let's use a very common concern of communications in marriage to think about some specific things you can reflect back, or specific ways you can use reflections. How do you know, first of all, what to reflect back to them? Let's say they come to you and everything they're saying is laden with fear, or everything has an undertone of anger, or they're depressed about everything in their marriage. Well, I almost guarantee you that not everything is that same emotion. Look for something that's different in the course of your conversation in listening to them. Pay attention. Let's say, for example, that in the course of your conversation, they're talking about the fact that they were so mad at each other, all they could do is sit in silence and watch TV. And in this show that they were watching, something made them laugh. Reflect that back to them and say, can you tell me more about that? You said you were really angry and she was really angry, but that part of the show brought a smile out to you. Or you're really scared because the conversation didn't go well, but in the show that one part brought a tear to your eye. And then just be quiet. What you're doing there is that conversation is reflecting part of the conflict in them, because fear and sadness and anger and joy are 4 different types of emotion that reflect different goals, different values, different beliefs, and you're starting to highlight the conflict within them, and it can help deepen their self-awareness instead of making everything about injustice or everything about a threat or everything about a loss. You're reflecting on one part that's different, and it gets them to think more deeply about what the conflict is really about. We don't have enough respect in our family, and that person in that show, they were disrespected, and it hurt them. And even though I'm talking so much about the anger I feel toward my spouse, it's really more hurt because I love them, I care about them, and I don't think they realize that I'm not as tough as they think I am, as one example. There are other things and ways that you can reflect, but the basic principle is to look for something that is different than what they're presenting to you, especially in emotion, because emotion is at the heart level about what they value, and the head level too about what they believe, and reflect that back to them. You said that scared you a little bit. Now, we've been talking, or I've been hearing you talk a lot about your sadness at the way that you and your spouse have been talking, but fear is different. Can you say more about that? And you're reflecting back that part that's different to help them grow in their self-awareness.